Flat Stanley, Stanley Flat again. Chapter 3. Stanley Sails. Early the next Sunday morning, Mr. Lambchop had a call from the old college friend, Larf Jones. Just wanted to remind you, George, that Stanley and I had a date to go sailing today, he said. He's looking forward to it, Larf. He's looking forward to it, Larf, Mr. Lambchop had stated. I should mention, perhaps, that Stanley has gone flat again. Mr. Jones sighed. I thought he'd got over that. I will pick him up at 10. Later that morning, driving with Stanley to his sailing club on the seashore. Mr. Jones inquired about the foreign visitor he had once met with the Ramchops. A prince, yes? He around these days? Stanley knew he meant a young genie, Prince Haraz, but it would be difficult to explain not only the genie part, but also the Haraz had returned to the genie kingdom from which he had come. No, Stanley said. He went home, actually. Too bad. Mr. John was famous for his amazing memory. Haraz, as I recall, Prince Fauji Mustaf Aslan Miraza Malak Namarad Haraz. Right, said Stanley. In the harbor of the sailing club, Mr. Jones prepared his boat, Love Bug, and explained it to Stanley. This big sail here is the mainsail, and that's the rudder back there for steering. In this jib bag in another sail called spinnaker. We will use that one for extra speed when we were learning before the wind. See that boat way out there? How its spinnaker is plopping out front. Stanley laughed. The spinnaker looks like an open umbrella lying on the side. See over there, Mr. John went on. Between the commit boat with the judge on it and the red buoy, that's the starting line. The race ends back there too. First boat to cross the line wins. He cast up the mooring line and the mainsail filled. Ludwig headed out to join the other boats. Mr. Jones pointed. There, that's for green boats. Wind sweep. He's the one I want especially to beat. Why, are you mad at him? Stanley asked. He was very rude to me once, but never mind, let's just make sure we win. Behind the start line, they found themselves beside Windsweep. Jasper Green gave a friendly wave, but Ralph Jones ignored him. You are always in bad mood with me, Ralph, Mr. Green said. Why, I didn't. Here we go! A pistol shot has signaled the start of the race. Ludbug and Windsweep and the other race glide across the start line, behind the motor-powered comet boat, which lead them along across a course made by buoy with a bright green stream. Stanley sat back, enjoying himself. The sun was bright, the breeze fresh against his face, the sky clear and blue, the water of beautiful slate color. There were boats on both sides of them, boats ahead, boats behind. How pretty they were! Their white sail making a cheerful cracking sound with blowed it in the wind. Along the shore, people waved from the porch of the house, their voice carrying faintly on the wind. Way to go! Looking good, sailors! Looking flat, one of them. Stanley waved back, knowing that this teasing was kind meant. Lava passed other boats, but there were many more still ahead, and now they were almost abreast of Windsweep. Stanley saw that Jasper Green had hoisted the spinnaker, and the other boats had too. "I've got you beat, Ralph!" Jasper Green shouted. "We will just round this point, Stanley." "Then, now," exclaimed Ralph Jones, "let's show Jasper what running before the wind really means." He attached his spinnaker to halyard and ran in up the mast. Whoosh! The spinnaker billowed out, and the Stanley felt love surged forward, as if pushed by an invisible hand. "Here we go!" shouted Ralph Jones. They passed 5 more boats, 3 more, then wind swept. They were ahead of every one now, and the finish line lay ahead. "We're going to win!" Stanley shouted. "Yes," Ralph Jones shouted back. "Just wait till Jasper." "Rip!" The sound came from above. Looking up, they saw that the top of the spinnaker had torn. "Rip!" The rib streaked downward, and now the spinnaker, turned all the way down, flapped uselessly in the wind. Lubbock slowed. "Drat!" Mr. John did his best with mainsail. "Drat! Drat! Drat!" Windsweep came up behind that. "Tough luck!" called Jasper Green. "Ha ha!" "Drat!" Mr. Jones sighed. "Nothing we can do, Stanley. Unless, this may be crazy, but Stanley, perhaps you could be our spinnaker?" "What?" Stanley shouted. "How?" "Good question," said Mr. Jones. "Let's see. First go take hold of the mast. That is it. Now maybe—" "Excuse me," Stanley said, "but did you ever do this before?" "Stanley, nobody ever did this before." Mr. Jones took a deep breath. "Okay, now twist around to face forward and grab the mast behind you above your head." Stanley did as he was told, planted his feet on side of the boat to hold him in place. The wind pressed him from behind, driving Love toward the finish line. "Yes, chest forward, butt back!" shouted Mr. Jones. "Best spinnaker I ever had!" In a moment they had passed the windswept, and Stanley could not help laugh at the surprise on the Jasper's face. And then they were across the finish line. Love had won. Back in the clubhouse, Jasper Green would not admit that he had lost. A person used to sail. He had ever seen that before. He said one to the race commit office to complain, but he returned shortly to report that Lubbock had indeed won. The commit had advised him. He said that there was no rule against a crew member allowing the wind to blow against him. "Great sailing, Larf," he said. "I thought it was my race. I really did." "Thank you, Jasper," Mr. Jones said. But Stanley noticed that he did not smile. Jasper Green noticed too. "Larf, you are still mad at me?" he said. "But why?" "You spill out coffee on my white pants, Jasper," said Ralph Jones, "and you just laughed when I jumped up." "What?" Jasper Green seemed to great surprise. "I don't remember where and when." "We were having lunch," said Mr. Jones, "at the old Bandercook Hotel." "The Bandercook It's closed down 20 years ago. Mr. Green slapped his forehead. I do remember that lunch was 20 years ago, Larv. 21, actually. All right, said Mr. Green. Apologize for heaven's sake. Larv Jones smiled warmly. Perfectly all right, Jasper, he said. Don't give it another thought.